Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chel Gimel, and Mir Hashem today we'll be learning Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph. We have quite a bit to do, so without further ado we're going to begin. We're going to start on the very top line of Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph. Near the end of the line, the words of the Ramah, where the Ramah begins V'nireh li. So let's just give a very brief hakdama because the Ramah is coming off of what we learned yesterday. Yesterday, the Mechaber told us that when you have a tanur and you're putting chamin, you're putting a pot of hot food inside the tanur on Erev Shabbos, and they would close up the door of the tanur, they would close it with a board of wood, v'shorkin oisai betit, and then they would smear some kind of clay, some kind of cement around the opening to seal it up. So the Mechaber told us two halachos. The Mechaber told us, first of all, you're allowed to break it open on Shabbos to take the pot out, and the chiddush of that is that there's no isser of stira, of doing demolition over here, even stira midrabanan. Then the Mechaber told us also v'lachzar l'sasmai. You're also then allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to reclose it. After you opened it up, you're allowed to reclose it. Now, on that, the Mishnah Berurah told us yesterday in Ois Katan Chaf that the chiddush of that is that you're not mechuyev to worry that maybe inside the tanur there are glowing embers or glowing coals, and by going in and closing it, you're going to choke off the oxygen flow to the fire, and you're going to dim the coals, and you're going to be doing kibui. So, Kamash Balon the Mechaber, if you don't know that there are glowing embers in there, you're not mechuyev to be choishish that there are glowing embers, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and reclose it. Now, on those two halachos, the first comment that the Ramah made, which we learned yesterday, was that this idea that you're allowed to break open the door of the tanur to take the pot out, the Ramah said on that there's a yesh machmirin, that are those that are machmir and hold that there is possibly an inyan of stira over here, and therefore the Ramah said that the minig is to rely on an Eina Yehudi to do this, and if there is no Eina Yehudi, to rely on a katan to do it, and then if all else fails, if there's no Eina Yehudi and there's no katan, then a Yisrael Gadol should do it, but he should do it with a shinui. Now we come to the Ramah's comment on the second halacha, which was the idea that you're allowed to close the door again, and you don't have to worry about glowing embers. Says the Ramah at the end of the line here, top line, Lamed Aleph, Amid Aleph. And nearly, the Ramah says, it would appear to me, this concept, this idea that the Mechaber says that you're allowed to go ahead and close the door again, hainu b'yoim. That's true on Shabbos day. Because by Shabbos day, for sure, whatever food you put in that tanur is already mavushal kol tzarcha, it's already completely cooked. Aval balaylo samach lahatmanasai. But if you're talking about Friday night, which is very soon after you did the hatmana. Now, what he means over here by hatmana is after you took the pot and you put it inside the tanur. We're not doing hatmana inside the tanur. We're taking the pot and inserting the pot into the tanur. So Friday night, we're talking about a case where it's quite soon after you first put this pot into the tanur. Says the Ramah, in that case, we have to have a doubt, we have to have a suffix. Shema hakederais adayin einon mevushalis kol tzarchan. Maybe the food that's in that pot is not mevushal kol tzarchai. And therefore, by going ahead and closing the door on the tanur, what you're doing is you're now allowing the tanur to build up more heat. And by allowing the tanur to build up more heat, you're actually accelerating the cooking. And there's a suffix here that you might actually come to bishul. This is very similar to a concept that we had earlier on in Reish Nun Zayin when we were talking about hatmana. And we spoke about adding additional layers of insulating material on top of food when it's sitting on top of a kira, that over there you might be accelerating the bishul, even if you use dvarim she'eno mesifim hevel. By better insulating the pot, you might allow more heat to build up and you might accelerate the cooking process. That's the same thing that the Ramah is saying over here. The Ramah is saying to go ahead and close the door of the tanur. If it's possible that the food inside is not mavushal kol tzarchai, you might be hastening the mavushal kol tzarchai. In that case, you might have a bishul shaila. Therefore, says the Ramah, also list time hatanor. So if you're talking about Friday night, very close to when you first put this into the tanner, it would be also to close the tanner, the goyim bishul, because you're actually bringing about bishul, kemoishin is bar siman reishtun zayin sif dalid, like we learned already when it came to hatmana in siman reishtun zayin sif dalid. Furthermore, says the Ramah, in that case, va'afilu al yedei eina Yehudi aser, this would be aser even through the agency of an eina Yehudi, because now you're actually talking about bishul, kamoshin ispar le'el soif siman reishtun gimel, like we said at the end of siman reishtun gimel, where the Ramah was very careful to say that anything that's aser for a yid to do, when it comes to שהייה, when it comes to chazara, is going to be aser for an eina Yehudi to do. You're not allowed to ask the eina Yehudi to do it, because you're actually possibly asking him to do bishul. At the end of this whole lengthy sugya of שהייה, chazara, hatmana, the Ramah lets us know, don't think that we're finished. We can't make the hadrin yet. We can't say hadrin halach sugyas chazara, because there are more halachos that are neged to chazara that we're going to learn be'ezras Hashem Yisparach later on in Siman Shin Yud Ches. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Chaf Gimel. When the Mechaber said that a Yid is allowed to go ahead and reclose the door to the Tanor, that's talking about Friday night, but not that's talking about Shabbos by day, when the food has been sitting in the tanner for a lengthy amount of time, and it's definitely mavushal called tzarchai. But not Friday night, says the Ramah, because by then it might not yet be mavushal called tzarchai, and then the Ramah said, yesh l'sapek, we have to worry. Maybe it's not mavushal called tzarchai, and by closing the door to the oven and allowing the oven to build up more heat, you're going to hasten the bishul. Says the Mishnah Berurah kan chav kimel the yesh l'sapek, hainu afilu meini yadei shekenhu, even if you don't know for sure that the food is not mavushal called tzarchai, still, yesh le'lachush lazeh, you have to be concerned that that might be the case mistama. He brings that down from the Machzah Shekel. Ois katan chav dalid. In that case, also list time hatanor, it would be also to close the door of the tanner. Why? Because through closing the door of the tanner, even if you don't smear clay around the opening, the tanner is going to build up more heat, and that's going to accelerate the cooking process. And that would be also even if you already swept out all the hot coals from the oven, or even if you did kitima, even if you banked the coals, it doesn't matter. Since there's still heat inside the oven, if you close the door, less heat is going to escape, which means that the heat is going to build up more than if you would have left it open. And by doing that, you may be accelerating the cooking process. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if the tanner indeed is not gar fekatim, then also liyisrael l'sasmai, then it would be also for a yid to close the door. Afim hakteres kvar mevushal is called sarchan miba'od yoyim. If the tanner is gara fekatim, so then you have one problem. You have a problem that you might be accelerating the bishul process. But says the Mishnah Berurah, realize, if the tanner is not gara fekatim, you have an additional problem, and that is a havara problem, and therefore, or a kivui problem, and therefore, even if you know that the food is mavushal called tzarchai, you still can't close the door. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why? Because very soon after Shabbos begins, there's a very high probability that there are still burning coals. They're not yet consumed. So they're going to be glowing. And you must be concerned. You have a worry that you're going to perform kibui al yedei astima. By closing the door, you might dim the coals and be over on performing kibui. The ilim should be meichel the bottle. Okay, Zok the Mishnah Berurah weiter, Ois Katan Chaf Hey. So the reason why you have a problem if the food is not mavushal called tzarchai is the goyim bishul. So you might be accelerating the cooking. Says the Mishnah Berurah, in that case, va'afilu b'di'evet asar atavshel. In that case, if you did accelerate the bishul process, then that cooked dish would be asar even b'di'evet, even after you did it. It would be asar till Motzei Shabbos, kedin mevashel b'Shabbos, like the din of somebody who performs bishul on Shabbos. Ayin l'kabon b'siman shin yud ches sif aleph. V'hu shelo higia adayin l'Michael ben Drusai. However, that would only be true if the food had not yet reached the degree of cooking of Kamichael ben Drusai. Ramah Siman Kuf Beis Ayin Sham to Behigia, because if the food was already cooked, K'Michael Ben Drusai, ain't less or b'zebed. We're not going to aser if you hastened the cooking process from K'Michael Ben Drusai to Mavushal Kol Tzarchai. You're not allowed to do that, but if you did it, we're not going to aser the food b'di'evet because the food was already edible. It would be aser to close the door of the oven on Friday night, even through the agency of an Eina Yehudi. Hastima, this refers to closing the door. Says the Mishnah Berurah, and this is true, even if the Eina Yehudi is not going to smear clay or cement around the opening, because again, by closing the door, he's being makar of the bishul. Certainly, you're not allowed to ask the Eina Yehudi to smear the clay on the opening. Because if you ask him to do that, you're being over on another isser. You're doing amira la'akum on the malacha of mimareach. Mimareach is smoothing out a thick substance. So you would be over on the isser of mimareach by asking, it would be amira la'akum on mimareach if you would ask him to do that. V'asar afilu hayasasa matanu mikaidim. To ask an Eina Yehudi to be mimareach to tit would be also even if the door of the tanner would never be opened. In other words, what the Chavetz Chaim is telling you is these are two independent yisurim. One problem over here is that by asking the Eina Yehudi to close the door, if it had been opened, he's being makar of the bishul. So you might be doing amira la'akum on bishul. Now there's another problem. Let's say the door was never opened. The door has been closed the whole time. Now you realized that you never smeared clay around the opening. So you want to ask an Eina Yehudi to do that. All right, there's no bishul issue because the door is closed and it was closed. So he's not going to be makar of the bishul, but he's going to be performing mimareach. So then you're over amira la'akum on the mimareach. Uleinian di'evet. Now, when it comes to di'evet, if you did have this done, if you did ask an Eina Yehudi to go close the door after it had been opened, so now the Eina Yehudi did a maisa that was mekarev the bishul. Is the food now going to be aser b'di'evet until Motzei Shabbos b'chdei sheyaseh? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Why? Deloyahani maisav kolkach. Because we're not getting that much benefit from the maisa that the Eina Yehudi did. At the end of the day, the food would have become cooked even without the Eina Yehudi reclosing the door. What the Eina Yehudi did was he made it get cooked faster. That's not enough of a benefit that now we should go ahead and aser the food b'di'evet. Kasvach writem yach right. Ta'afilu b'kayetz, even during the summer months, sherigilun lotzais mibeis hakneses, ba'oid yom gadol, when people would typically make early Shabbos, and they would come out of davening when it's still early in the day. It's yet before Shkia. It's before Ben Hashmoshes. Sha'adayin lo choshcha. It didn't get dark yet. It's not Shkia yet. V'lo yigia zman Ben Hashmoshes. It's not Ben Hashmoshes yet. Ve'eni surah liyisrael rak b'darabanan. And now for a yid to do malacha would only be an issa d'rabanan. Now let's be very careful about this. What this means is, if you make early Shabbos and you come out of Ma'ariv and it's not Shkia yet, so it's not even Ben Hashmoshes yet, so you are Makabel Shabbos before Shkia. If you do malacha between the time that you were Makabel Shabbos and Shkia, that's only an issa d'rabanan. Once you get up to Ben Hashmoshes, now it's already Suffolk Yom, Suffolk Laila. It would be a Suffolk Skila, a Suffolk Krisis. It would also Pashtus, you would be over on an Asay of Tais for Shabbos. But this idea that there's only an Issa D'Rabbanan is only if it's still before Shkia. So if you made Shabbos by Plag, right after Plag, and you got home, it's not even Shkia yet, if a Yid would do Malacha, then it would be an Issa D'Rabbanan. So, ve'eni surely Yisrael rak b'darabanan mepnei shekibel olav Shabbos afilu hachi yesh lizar maloymar ozla Eina Yehudi lister matanor. Even during that time period, when for you to reclose the door of the tanor and be makar of the bishul would only be an issa d'rabanan, you still should not ask an Eina Yehudi to do this. Why? The yavai loymar loy gam b'chayrif sheyotzim mi beis hakneses samach lechashecha. Because if you get used to doing this during the summer months, you might come to also doing it during the winter months when already you're chasing shkia. V'ad sheyital yadav yekadish v'yarm le'ein Yehudi oides hatanor yi'alayla mamish. You might end up if you get in the habit of asking an Eina Yehudi to do this, you might end up, chas v'chalila, during the winter months, asking an Eina Yehudi to do this after already the Zman Shabbos. Okay, now we come to a very, very beautiful piece of Mishnah Berurah. I would love to finish all of it today. I don't know if we'll be able to, but we're going to try to. Where the Chavetz Chaim comes now, and he kind of does a beautiful chazara on the sugya of Shehia, Chazara, and Hatmana. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Ba Yivur Kol Ikrei Ha'inyanim. Over here we are going to now go through all of the main bullet points Shel Shehia v'Hatmana, when it comes to the Yisurim of Shehia and Hatmana, also Chazara, Bekitzer, in very short fashion, and this is collated from Mimagen Avram, v'Tosefes Shabbos, u'Sha'arei Achronim. Says the Chavetz Chaim as follows. I will try to give kind of a recap, a basic explanation of every point that the Chavetz Chaim makes based on what we've learned previously. I'll go through it as concisely as possible. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Klala de Milsa. The rules are as follows. Nowadays, when typically what people do on Erev Shabbos is, they take a pot and they put it inside the tanur and they do it megulois, they do it exposed, meaning they don't do hatmana. They don't wrap the pot. They just take the pot and they insert it into the tanur. We don't wrap the walls of the pot in any insulating materials. We just take the pot and put it inside the tanur. In Cain, if so, let's analyze this. Ein lehen rak din shehia. So the only Isid Rabbanan that we have to be concerned with is the Shaila of Hatman, of Shehia. What we're doing is Shehia. What's Shehia? Shehia is taking a pot of hot food on Erev Shabbos and putting it on a fire, near a fire, inside a heat source. You're doing it on Erev Shabbos and allowing it to stay there through the beginning of Shabbos and into Shabbos. That's a Shaila of Shehia. Since you're not wrapping the pot, there is no Shaila here of Hatmana. V'loy Hatmana b'davar ha'moisef hevel. There's no Shaila here of Hatmana b'davar ha'moisef hevel. You're not doing Hatmana b'davar ha'moisef hevel. Why? Because remember what we learned. Hatmana is only when you wrap the pot so that the insulating materials are in contact with the pot. Over here, even though the pot is completely immersed inside the airspace of the oven, there's nothing wrapping, there's nothing insulating around the walls or the top of the bottom of the pot. So this is not a Hatmana shayla. And even if you would take the pot and you would put the pot inside the tanur on top of the gecholim, on top of the coals, since on top the pot is uncovered, loy mikri hatmana. K'moshe kasav Ramah, Slave Siman Reish Nun Gimel, Sif Aleph B'Haga. We paskin like the Ramah. The Ramah says hatmana b'miktzas is not considered hatmana. So even if you rest the pot on the coals are certainly a davar ha'moisef hevel, but that's only on the bottom of the pot. So according to the Ramah, this is not hatmana. So what do we have over here? We have a shehia shayla. Okay, so says the Chavetz Chaim, ulefikach, therefore, im nispashlu k'Michael ben Drusai miba'od yom, if the contents of the pot have already been cooked to the degree of Michael ben Drusai, and the Chavetz Chaim reminds us what that is, hainu kechatzi bishulai, that means it's halfway cooked, v'yesh arbim shlish bishul, or maybe even only a third of the way cooked, so then, mutar lahashaysan, so then you're allowed to do shehia. We're paskening, the Mishnah Berurah is telling us right here, we're paskening like the Ramah. The shita of the Ramah, the psak of the Ramah was that the food only has to be cooked to the degree of Michael ben Drusai. Once the food is cooked to the degree of Michael ben Drusai, there no longer is a chash shema yechata b'gechalim. You're not going to stoke the coals because the food's already edible. So therefore, once your food is Michael ben Drusai, the Ramah paskin, there's no isser of shehia anymore. If there's no isser of shehia, you could do shehia even if the tanur is not garafakatum, even if it still contains hot coals and you didn't bank them. Shehia is still mutter. So that was point number one. Then says the Mishnah Berurah, ubasar, when we're dealing with meat, im nois noi chai b'kedera, if you take raw meat and you put raw meat into a pot, so you're putting up your cholent right before Shabbos, and you put raw meat in your cholent. Ubasar, im noistoi chai b'kedera samach l'chashecha mamish, if you put raw meat into your pot right before Shabbos, tahainu kaid b'shkia sachama, right before Shkia, hareze gamken mutter, then Shehiyah is also mutter. Why is Shehiyah mutter? Because since the basar is not going to become cooked for the Friday night Suda, even if you are mechata b'gechalim, so then you're Mesiach Das. So then we're not worried that you're going to be Shem Yechata b'gechalim, and then again, there is no Isser of Shehiyah midrabanan. Aval, however, the Mishnah Berurah reminds us, tzli, when it comes to roasted meat, if you want to take meat, raw meat, and you want to put it exposed to the hot coals, not in a pot, you're putting it down right next to or on top of the exposed coals, oh, that could become cooked very, very quickly. In that case, even if you do it right before Shabbos when it's completely raw, we have to be afraid Shemi Yechata b'gechalim, because now, if you're Mechata b'gechalim, it'll be ready for the Friday night Suda. Sol aval tzli, when it comes to roasted meat, umine batzek, or items that are made out of dough, umini kitnius, or a cooked dish of legumes, upashtida, or some kind of a pastry, loy mahanichai, those you can't do shehiyah on, even if they're raw right before Shabbos. Why? Because they cook quickly. And since they cook quickly, you're not going to be Mesiach Das, and therefore there's a chashash Shemi Yechata b'gechalim. Therefore, what's the halacha? V'tzark sheyispashel kamaychel ben drusai kaidem Shabbos. If you want to do shehiyah on those kind of foods, then they have to be cooked at least to the degree of Michael ben drusai before Shabbos to obviate the concern of Shemi Yechata b'gechalim. However, if you do have these kind of dishes, so you have a pastry of some kind, you have a vegetable soup that's made with beans and legumes and other quick cooking stuff, and now you want to put it up right before Shabbos, so here's an eitzah. Throw in a raw piece of meat right before Shabbos. So even if they're already partially cooked, if now right before Shabbos you throw in a raw piece of meat, so now you've taken advantage of the halacha that since it contains a raw piece of meat, there's no concern, Shemi Yechata b'gechalim, and she is going to be mutter. So gam ken mutter. Ubetanur tuach petit, if you're dealing with a tanur that has been sealed with clay, so then we learned hakol shari. We learned in the Ramah earlier, in Reish Nun Zayin, that when you have a tanur tuach petit, if you have a tanur that's sealed with clay, we no longer have a concern, Shemi Yechata b'gechalim. Why? Pashtus from the Ramah, because we're not afraid that you're going to bust open what you sealed to go do chitui. Once you seal it, we're not concerned that you're going to do chitui. However, if you know that there are glowing embers inside that tanur, if you know that there are burning embers inside that tanur, now you're not allowed to open it. Because even though you'll tell me it's a davar she'eino miskaven, you're not interested in firing up the embers, maybe that might be true, but it's a psik reisha. When you open the door, air is going to come in, it's going to fire up the embers. So you're not allowed to open the door, you have to have an Eina Yehudi open the door. Why? Because you're going to fire up the coals through opening the door, they have a psik reisha, and this is a psik reisha to do that. Now, why are you allowed to do it through the agency of Eina Yehudi? Isn't the Eina Yehudi going to fire up the coals? So aren't you asking the Eina Yehudi to do havara? The answer is what we learned earlier on, I think even on Lamid Amid, well, not really on Lion Amid Bays, really earlier in Mishnah Berurah Chaf Aleph, I believe it was. We learned that we're not concerned about psik reisha by Amir al-Akum. What are you doing over here? You're asking an Eina Yehudi to open up the door of the oven to take the pot out. The firing up of the embers is a davar she'eino miskaven for him as well. He has no intent on firing up the embers. It's a psik reisha that when he opens the door, he's going to fire up the embers. Yeah, but Amir al-Akum is a shvus. It's an issa d'Rabbanan. And him firing up the embers by opening the door, that has nothing to do with a Maisa Yisrael. So it's an issa d'Rabbanan, and there's no Maisa of Yisrael involved in here, and therefore we're not concerned, even though it's a psik reisha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, let's say what you did was you built up coals around the pots. but not on top. So again, there's no hatmana here. Then lo yikach Yisrael akdera, a yid should not take the pot out, because by a yid taking the pot out, if there are hot coals built up all around it, he's definitely going to shake up the coals. So by taking the pot out, he's going to be mechate b'gecholim, and he might come to perform havara. So you must do this through the agency of an Einoi Yehudi. Let's say the pot is not built up with hot coals around it, but the pot is sitting on top of coals. Now, when the pot is sitting on top of coals, there's also a chashash of havara, because when you take the pot off the coals, you stir up the coals, you also expose them to air. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, if it's sitting on top of the coals, shari al yedei Yisrael, it's mutter for a yid to do it, if there's no any Yehudi, it's mutter for a yid to do it. However, he should take care that he should take the pot off very gently, and he should not shake up the coals. And this is true also on Friday night. When you take a pot out of the oven, therefore, nizharim, it is proper to take care, samach l'chashecha, close to the beginning of Shabbos, kishamashin hakidera hamuvusheles leleil Shabbos betanor. If you're putting a kedera, a pot of cooked food, inside the tanner for use for Friday night, you should be careful l'nat koiktsas kaidem Shabbos, to remove it a little bit off the coals before Shabbos begins, mino eish, kedei שהייה achakach yakal asiroi misham below yishom chashash. Be careful how you set it up on Erev Shabbos to make sure you should be able to remove it without running into a problem of being mechate b'gecholim. The Mishnah Berurah moves along to another point. Mutter lahanyach b'Shabbos, it would be mutter on Shabbos, b'Shabbos. Mutter lahanyach b'Shabbos tafshel cham. If you have a hot dish, what does that mean? It's a hot dish. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily yad seledes. It might be cooler than yad seledes, but it's not nitztanein legamri, meaning it's still considered warm food. So umuter lanyach b'Shabbos tavshel cham shenispashel kol tzarchai. Now we're talking here about a davar lach. We're talking about something that has sauce, gravy, or a soup, or liquids, right? So you have a davar lach. It's mavushel kol tzarchai. It's not nitztanein legamri. So now there's no shaila here of bishul. By a davar lach, if it would be nitztanein legamri, if it would already be cold, then rewarming it would be bishul. We paskin yesh bishul lacha bishul by a davar lach. But over here, if it's not nitztanein legamri and it's mavushel kol tzarchai, so far we have a case here where there's no shaila of bishul. You have fully cooked and it's not nitztanein legamri. So now, says the Mishnah Berurah, you're allowed to take that food and you're allowed to put it samuch letanor, close to a hot tanor, al halevizvez shaloi, on the ledge. So they had a tanor, and this is again the tanor beis hachoyref, the warming stove that we learned about earlier in Reish Dun Zayin. So you have this stove, and it had a ledge outside around it. You could take a hot pot, a warm pot of a fully cooked davar lach. So you have a vegetable soup. It's fully cooked, and it's still warm. You could take it, and you could put it on the ledge of the tanner. Afilu husak tanner, even if there's a fire inside the tanner, ve'ena garfikotum, and it's not garfikotum. Tismicha lo yothru bazeh, because we learned earlier in Reish Nun Gimel that smicha, to put a davar lach next to a kira that is burning, that is mutter. We learned on Chaf Amid, the Mechaber said, "Va'afilu eina grufa." Even if you have a kira that's not grufa, you didn't take the coals out. There's still burning coals in there. Uketuma, and it's not banked. Mutter lismaich la kedera b'samach chutzala. You're allowed to do שהייה on Erev Shabbos by putting a pot next to it. And the Mishnah Berurah brought down a machlekes over there, whether or not this also applies to chazara, and whether or not it also applies to doing smicha lechatchila on Shabbos. The Mishnah Berurah is saying over here that if it's fully cooked and it's still warm, you could do smicha lechatchila on Shabbos. That's what he says here. Umutar laniach b'Shabbos tafshel cham shenispashel kol tzarchai samach l'taner alav izvei shaloi afilu husak hataner ve'ina gar fekatum tesmicha loy asru bazeh va'al hataner. How about to put it on top of the tanner? So you have this wood-burning stove, and it's got a roof. There are no openings to put pots on. This is not made for cooking on. This is a heating stove. Are you allowed to take this davar lach shenispashel kol tzarchai and it's still warm? Could you put it on top of the roof of the oven? Says the Mishnah Berurah, al hataner, nagu ha'olam heter im loy husak hadayin. The minig of the Welt is that if there's no fire inside the tanner, you could put it up there, and then later the Eini Yehudi will go ahead and make a fire, and it'll get warm. Avalam husak v'yesh oish b'saychai loy. But if there's a fire burning inside, then we're makbid like the sheet of the Maharil that the Mishnah Berurah brought down earlier, that we don't put it on top of the tanner. But if you put down a board on top of the tanner, or you put a brick on top of the tanner, and now you want to put this pot on top of that, so you have a davar that's being mafsik between the pot and the roof of the tanner, then you could do it. So you created a hecker. You created something that reminds you and shows everybody that this is not derech bishul, and this is like kind of an issue of gar fekatum. You're not going to come to do chitoi, then shari, then it's mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, v'chol zeh b'tafshel chamtzas. But this is only true if the food is still warm. Aval b'tafshel kar. But if you're talking about a davar lach, if you're talking about a vegetable soup, or meat in gravy, or a soupy cholent, this is a davar lach. If it's already nitztan in legamri, if it's cold, aval b'tafshel kar legamri, afilu kaidem shehosak aser afilu lismoich. Even if the tanner is not fired up, it's a cold tanner. You can't take a davar lach out of the refrigerator and put it by the tanner, even if the tanner is not fired up, and even forget about on top of the tanner, even next to the tanner you're not allowed to put it. Kiyam al yedei Eini Yehudi kaidem shehusak. The only thing you would be allowed to do is have an Eini Yehudi put it on before it's fired up, ula'aka shehusak, and after it was fired up, afilu al yedei Eini Yehudi aser. It would be also to ask an Eini Yehudi to put it there. It would be also to even ask an Eini Yehudi to put it there after it was fired up. Why? Because since we're talking about a davar lach that's done in legamri, that's bishul. Diyesh bazech shash bishul. But if we're dealing with food or a hot drink that's needed for a chayla she'ein by sakana, cotton, or you need it for a miner she'en lam alechel, who doesn't have anything else to eat, a cotton that doesn't have what to eat or drink is called a chayla she'ein by sakana. So then, then you would be allowed to ask an Eini Yehudi to warm up something even inside the tanner. Why? Because Amir La'akib is a drabanan, and Makam Chayli Lo Yehabidu Chamchamim Divreihem. The Issa drabanan doesn't apply to Makam Chayli. Now, until now, we were dealing with a davar lach. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'davar she'ein by reitiv, if we're talking about a davar gush, a davar yavesh, if we're talking about a dry food, then we paskin there's no bishul acha bishul. V'davar she'ein by reitiv, afilu kar kecham dami, even if it's stan legamri, even if it's cold, it's the equal of a hot davar lach. The davar she'yavesh, and it's stunning, because when it comes to a davar yavesh, a dry food that got cold, kaimelon de'ein bishul acha bishul. Now, another chiddush here, upeiros chayin, raw fruits, an apple. Avshen echolim kach, even though you could eat an apple just the way it is, v'chein mine mashkin, or liquids. Dinam kitavshel sheyesh by reitiv, that has the same din as a davar lach. If it's done in legamri, if it's completely cold, the shaykh behem bishul, where there is bishul. So don't look at an apple and think that an apple is a davar yavesh and there's no bishul on it. No. There is bishul on an apple. So you can't take an apple that's tztana legamri and put it next to the tanur to go ahead and make a baked apple. You're not allowed to do that. V'litein davar ma al hakdera hakavua b'tanur. And back in the day, this wood-burning stove that was used for heat had a heat chamber, a heating chamber, or if you will, a pot fixed to it. So this wasn't a removable pot. This was a structure, a chamber, on the top or on the side of the tanur, built in. So v'litein davar ma al hakdera hakavua b'tanur. Could you put something in there to heat it up? Says the Mishnah Berurah, dinoi kamay al hatanur u'b'soich hakochlin. That would be the same din that we stated previously about putting food on top of the tanur, and the kochlin is also like a heating shelf affixed to the tanur. V'laseis l'soich hamayim shebekdera hahi kan im mashkin. If you have hot water inside that heating chamber, and now you want to take something, a bottle, and stick it in, pshita de aser, that is definitely aser. V'Yisrael aser litein mayim lusach haktera hi b'Shabbos afilu koyd b'shahusak. A yid is not allowed to put water inside that heating chamber on the oven, even before the oven has been fired up, if the Eini Yehudi is going to come fire it up later. Achim nisanama Eini Yehudi koyd b'shahusak. But if an Eini Yehudi put water in there before it was fired up, shari lehanis behem, you're allowed to have hana from that water. All these halachos we learned previously. Gam be'erev Shabbos samach l'chashecha, even on erev Shabbos right before Shabbos, also l'Yisrael litein shamayim l'soich haktera hahi kishahusak oiz. A yid is not allowed to put water inside that chamber if it was already fired up. Eli im kein sheyuchlu lehischamim kechatzi chuma miba'oyim. Only if the water could reach K'Michael ben Drusai before Shabbos. Ubishas atchak sheshachach litein mikodim. Now, if you forgot to put water into that chamber on erev Shabbos, v'yarei shemeti baka akdera me'achayim, and now there's a concern that that heating chamber might bust from the heat if there's no water in it. It could be you could be makel. But you have to make sure to put that water in before shkia. Also, likroich b'Shabbos kedera im meichel cham bekarum uksasais imhu tchilas hatmana. You're not allowed to do hatmana lechatchila on Shabbos. So if Shabbos already started and you have your hot chicken soup and you realize you forgot to do hatmana, you're not allowed to do hatmana on Shabbos, even with a davar she'edem oisef hevel. Aval chazara mutter. But if you had a pot that was already wrapped up when Shabbos came in, and now it got unwrapped on Shabbos and you want to rewrap it, that you're allowed to do. The chol zeh dafke imhu ba'isek terish and is partial ba. This iser to do hatmana lechatchila on Shabbos is only in the klirishin. That's only in the pot that the food was originally cooked in. Aval in pino liktera acheres. But if you cooked a soup in one pot and now you poured it out into a klisheni, moto likrei haktera hahi, you're allowed to do hatmana on a kli sheni, even on Shabbos. Since we have another few minutes over here, we learned all of this about Shehiyah and Hatmana. A lot of it was a little bit abstract. We're talking about kiris and tanurim and kupachs that we don't really have nowadays. I think the most common shilos that we have nowadays when it comes to Hatmana, Shehiyah, Hatmana, and Chazara, a lot is spoken about when it comes to crackpots. I'm not necessarily saying over here, was de Welt vierzach. If you have a Rav, which you should, you have a Paisik that you ask your shilos to, definitely go ahead and ask your Paisik. From where I'm coming from the psukim that I was bekabel from my Rebbe, Rav Reuven Feinstein, Shlita zal sein gesundten Staat, based on the psukim of Rav Moshe Zechet Tzadik v'Kadosh Levracha. When it comes to a crockpot, the basic two types of crockpots. You have the earthenware crockpots, where it's an insert that goes inside a heated body. You have the other type, which is basically more or less kind of a hot plate, and then a pot that sits on top of it. There's no shiloh of hatmana, even when it comes to the insert, because the top of the pot is not covered. Yes, it has a pot cover, but the pot cover is part of the pot. So you have a pot, and you're inserting the pot into a keli that gets hot. So that outer keli, the crock pot, the outside of the crock pot, is a davar amoisiv hevel, and you're being matmin your pot inside it, but you're not putting anything on top of the insert. Only the pot lid. You're not putting anything on top of the pot lid. So this is hatmana b'miktzas. It's hatmana b'miktzas. There's no hatmana. They say over from Shlomo Zalman, Zechet Tzadik V'Kodesh Levrach, or Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that he was makbid on this. He held it is hatmana. So people who follow that psak, what they do is they make balls out of tinfoil. They put it inside the insert. They rest the insert on top of it so that they raise part of the pot up outside of the insert. But again, we don't do that. When it comes to the other type of crockpot, how do you make a blech? How do you accomplish grifa uktima? Now let's remember, based on what we learned at the beginning of Siman Reish and Gimel, more or less we really paskin like a halacha, like the Ramah, like the Shita of Hananya, where if you have food that's already cooked kameichel ben drusoi, at least for sure for Shehiyah purposes, you don't need a blech. Okay, we want to be makbid, let's say like the Mechaber. According to the Mechaber, it has to be muvushal called tzarchai, but not only does it have to be muvushal called tzarchai, it has to be mitztamik, veraloi. I think for the most part, most of our cholents, generally speaking, if you put up your cholent early, it's muvushal called tzarchai, but it's mitztamik v'yofeloi. So if you want to have a blech, and for sure if you want to be able to do chazara, you need a blech. How do you make a blech? So based on the psukim that I was makabel, you don't need a blech underneath the crock pot that sits on top of a hot plate. The fire is covered. There is no fire. You can't see any fire. There's no fire. It is covered. How do you make a blech? What you do is you take a piece of silver foil and you wrap the control knob. By wrapping the control knob, now you're making a hecker that you're not going to be mechate begecholim. How are you mechate begecholim by a crock pot? You raise the heat. That's what you do. Oh, it's not cooking hard enough, I'll turn the dial. Okay, by removing the dial, or by going ahead and better, according to the poskim, go ahead and put tinfoil over it. Make some kind of a hecker so that you look at it, you're not going to raise it because there's a hecker. Okay, sometimes people put a sheet of foil under it because they say that the method of ketima that's brought down by Chazal is b'mokim hagecholim. What is ketima? Ketima is you bank the coals. So you're doing the ketima on the coals. So you want to do the ketima on the heat source. So you want to make the hecker on the heat source. Remember, we spoke about this earlier. There are two pshatim in what ketima accomplishes. One pshat in what ketima accomplishes is that by doing ketima, you're doing a maisa that shows that you want to lessen the heat. Once you do a maisa to lessen the heat, we're not afraid you're going to be mechata b'gecholim. The other pshat is that ketima is a hecker. By banking the coals, you did something which now serves as a hecker to remind you that you're not going to be mechata b'gecholim. So by the crockpot, by covering the dial, you could accomplish that goal of ketima, that you make a hecker. Some people want to accomplish the other goal of ketima. They want to do a maisa to lessen the heat. How do you do a maisa to lessen the heat? People take a sheet of tinfoil, they put a sheet of tinfoil over the hot plate between the pot and the hot plate. I don't believe that accomplishes ketima at all, as far as lessening the heat, because all it's going to do is make the thermostat kick on earlier so that it builds up more heat. So you're not lessening the heat. You might actually be making matters worse, because it could be that by putting that piece of tinfoil there, you're also accomplishing more hatmana, especially if you're using the insert. Maybe you're accomplishing hatmana b'miktzas. So we don't do that. We don't put foil under it. I'm giving you, again, I'm not talking out of the mouthpiece of how the velt necessarily should be noyik. Go, you have a Rav, go ask your Rav. I'm telling you the psukim that I was makabel. Okay, Baruch Hashem, wow, we made it through his update, his chazara over here, chazara andine chazara. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Baruch Shem should send Yeshua's first parashat shedukim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the BSKL Tzedek b'meherav Yameinu. What's interesting to me is I actually said this shir on Erev Shabbos, quite close to Shabbos. So it's in Yona de Yoma. Thank you so much. Be well.